Okay. Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Now, what does it take? What does it really take to build a startup? What do you have to give up or sacrifice? How many extra hours do you have to work? What about the loss of things like holidays, sick pay? And what's the pressure like from loved ones who might want a stable and predictable present and future? Well, I'm joined here today by a very young startup company called DevAlly. And the co-founders, Cormac Chisholm, is CEO, and Patrick Guiney Fox, I believe.
That's it, yeah.
That's right.
Recently married.
Guys, what is the biggest thing you have to give up when you're building a startup?
Good God.
A lot.
Yeah.
We've a lot. Like it's not just us anymore. So we're not fresh-faced 20-somethings. We're well into our 30s now, and there's just other people involved. There's families, there's partners.
Okay, talk to me about that for a second. Partners. You're married,
Yeah.
Patrick. You're about to get married.
Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Well, congratulations. But so what do they think? You're in a stable. You've worked in places like Zendesk and LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah.
You've worked for companies as well before. So you're telling them, no, I want to go off and chase this dream. What are they saying?
Well, actually, overwhelming support from my partner as well.
Okay, you have to say that. I'm just going to say.
Truly, and I think it's one of those things where I think that sometimes it takes having somebody who's in it with you in that same sense. It's the same sense with even having a co-founder. I think having a partner who's there to kind of say like, hey, no, like I believe in you, go do this. You've talked about it enough.
Yeah.
That's usually the.
So is there an element of that? You keep talking about it. Could you for God's sake just go and do it?
I think so for sanity's sake. Yeah, I think that's part of it for sure.
Because like I've never done a startup,
Yeah.
so I am talking from outside here. But I do enjoy things like structured holidays and sick
Yeah.
pay and pension contributions and all of these things.
We definitely don't have that package right now.
Right.
We don't. But
So then how does that come into the conversation, or the family conversation?
there's just a lot of talk, and I think as Cormac said, it's like, right, you've been talking about this long enough, you've been dreaming about this for long enough, and go and do it. Go and give it a try, because me personally, I probably would have lacked the confidence to give a startup and to give a venture a go. But if it wasn't for my own partner and yours as well, Cormac, with you, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
And how did that manifest itself? What specifically encouragement or advice or words were you given that helped you there?
It wasn't advice. It was more of a DM from Cormac about 6 months ago going, we've known each other for a decade, and he's like, hey, I've got an idea. Really want to meet with you to talk about it. And then the idea just grew legs, validation, demos, meeting different people. And then slowly but surely, my own partner thought this was a real thing. So when we got that core understanding of where we're going. And
what about stuff like, health experts say that you should always have time to switch off, to recharge, work-life balance. It's an assumption that people who are in startups, particularly at a young stage, put in ungodly hours. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. And I think like you sacrifice a lot. You sacrifice a lot of weekends and things, particularly at the start when you're not full-time yet on the startup. You're kind of giving up a lot of your outside time. I think that somebody once explained this to me in the sense of like work-life balance doesn't really exist as you kind of shut off after a certain point. There's going to be periods in your life where you're more hyper-focused on your career. You have to take the time after the fact to make up for that with regard to relationships that you've put on the long finger in terms of time.
Yeah, because I distinctly remember, not to bring Elon Musk into it, but
Yeah.
He actually gave some pretty insightful views about his own personal life, and he basically said he didn't have time to have a partner, didn't have time to have a wife or girlfriend. He's been married a couple of times to a couple of different people, the same woman twice actually.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, from the actress who was in Westworld and St. Trinian's, and for the life of me, I cannot remember her name off the top of my head. However, I'm confident that I'm going to get the answer to that. But his basic point is, look, I have choices with my time and my direction and what I want to do and what I'm going to be remembered for, and what I want to pour my energy into. And it overwhelmingly went into this thing. I got hyper focused on it. Do you get any sense of that hyper focus at all, or?
More just like we're not like Elon just yet. We're not
Tallulah Riley. Excuse me.
Tallulah Riley. Tallulah Riley. Never heard of her, but we're not quite at Elon's level yet. Sleeping on a sleeping bag in in the Tesla factory floor. Sort of. We're spending a lot of long hours in dog patches, which is where our office is. But yeah, there is.
How long do they let you work there? This is in CHQ in IFSC.
We have got the keys until next year. I think that's what you.
Yeah.
The keys meaning you can go in there at 3 a.m. in the morning?
3 a.m. Yeah, we could probably sneak.
They've been pretty good for that stuff, for letting us in. But fortunately, we don't have to do too much of that at the minute in terms of like being in 24 hours. But they've been very good with us.
What about money? Is that a sacrifice?
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. A lot of budgets have to be made. Just huge amount. Personally, huge amount of spending has to be cut back. Just what exactly the outgoings and incomings are.
You mean personally?
Personally, yeah,
like
for
what?
sure. Like there's like any normal person. I'm very, very fortunate to own a house at the moment. Own a house, but we've had to obviously take in. We've had to rent out a room that's covered a good chunk of the mortgage. But it's all to get Dev Ally off the ground. But yeah, spending is hugely different.
So birthdays are different, Christmas different, maybe holidays are different, maybe.
Getting better at handcrafting gifts instead of...
holidays are key. Even like when we're just back from San Francisco, but you know...
come on.
That wasn't a holiday.
My partner and I had basically booked a spa weekend away in Italy, and that was kind of our big holiday, and I just said to her, like, hey, look, I gotta go. We gotta go with these meetings for customers and things. And she was like, go, do it. And we canceled.
I should do another podcast sometime on the long-suffering, unbelievably supportive partners of startup founders.
Bring them in here. They'd have a lot to say. But the spending has definitely changed in the last 6 months, getting this off the ground.
And before we get into the specifics of Dev Ally and what it's for and what it's about and what you're doing with it, what does, in a general sense, what does success or a good result look like to you? You're at a very early stage at the moment. You haven't really released product yet. What does a good result, a good outcome at this very early stage look like to you? And then what's an unbelievable outcome?
For us, the focus is on accessibility experts to start. If we can enable them to do their job better, that's our win.
Before your startup, that might happen, and your startup could still crash.
Yeah.
For you and your business and your own aspirations, what does success, what does a good outcome at this point look like for you?
I think, again, what we're so hyper-focused on right now is product. And the reason I'll kind of come back to that is if we're starting at a point of making that a success, the market shows that there's enough people out there that are willing to buy that. So we're starting from a place of if we can make their jobs easier and better and help facilitate them to do and make accessible products, then we can scale this out to a really substantial business.
Okay, that's the logic, that's the thinking behind it.
Yeah.
Have you started companies before?
Yeah, so I've run a digital product development agency. So what we used to do is primarily focused on helping early stage startups build the first versions of their products. Ended up working with a lot of startups out of the US doing that, and then subsequently went to work for another company.
Okay, and how does this compare?
Very different. So I've got a co-founder with this one. So already massive advantage in that. Again, someone who's incredibly skilled at the things that I'm not great at.
Yeah.
Right?
What does bringing a co-founder, what is it like doing it by yourself versus with a co-founder? Is a problem shared, a problem halved?
For sure.
Very much the case. And as well, a fresh perspective. So, it's good to have someone to bounce ideas off of as well and come from a very different perspective.
And be there for there's definitely been a number of highs, but there's been a lot of lows.
Yeah.
Like there's been a lot of when we kicked this off in January with validation, we had a lot of people not returning our calls, saying no, we'll pass. Like now, thankfully that's changed. We're sitting here today, but you would have to be shout out to all of the solo founders out there. They have to be incredibly strong-willed and resilient. I don't know how they do it.
Well, maybe they just prefer to have full control.
Potentially, yeah. But you need another person to scale. Like we actually are bringing on a third. We're bringing on a third person as CTO in the coming weeks. He's absolutely fantastic. So I'm glad that we'll have a third person to the band.
A fresh perspective as well. Like that's it's so good and so valuable. And like even those early conversations, the questions he was asking, we were like, okay, we're getting fresh perspective before we even started here.
We've known each other 10 years. We met at this like Google startup weekend thing where you'd set up a business in 72 hours and you wouldn't have a notion of what you're doing, but you would meet a lot of really interesting people, and that was completely alien to me coming from corporate. But Cormac and I always stayed in touch. We were forever talking about businesses, thinking about this idea, that idea. We just put the foot down.
What made you go to that were you working for LinkedIn at the time?
I was at Zendesk at the time.
Zendesk at the time. What made you go to that?
I had done a lot of soul searching, and you'd ask like, what does success look like? And obviously there's the business goals that Cormac has talked about, but I had spent a lot of sleepless nights kind of lying in bed thinking that I really, really want to start a business, that I wasn't fully fulfilled or satisfied. And I've been incredibly fortunate in my career with so many things, but like I've always wanted to start a business. I sold Pokemon cards when I was 11 as my first. I didn't know that was selling. I didn't know that was being a business owner. That was always something I loved, and that obviously evolved from Pikachus to different things. And like I started a social enterprise when I was 25. That was to stop the high dropout rate of first generation people moving to college. We got a good bit of traction with that with the HEA and the Department of Education. And I spent 6 years, great years in tech, and it was knowing Cormac, knowing the idea, and seeing the amount of validation we've been getting that made us all make that
You were
jump.
just looking for your opportunity to
For
jump
sure.
in. This weekend came along. You meet Cormac. The two of you then stay in touch. Is it over the interim period?
10 years. But like I remember, like when I had the idea for the company, like I drew up a list of names of like people that I wanted, and Patrick was like top of the list.
That's good.
And now as well, this third person that's joining was also like really high on that list. So it's just we're getting to build something really special with amazing people, but just that difference of having that second person, it's a multiplier effect. Every time you bring in someone that's like incredibly talented, it's just a multiplier in terms of what impact you can actually have.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about the startup itself, Devali. Just explain to me, give me the real over 30-second pitch on it.
So high level, what we're doing is we're improving accessibility. Accessibility is the practice of ensuring that people with disabilities can use digital products.
Websites, etc.
Websites, apps, like again, just even devices like an Alexa, like all these different devices that we're used to, that people with disabilities can use those.
Okay, and the name itself, Devali, it's DEV, capital A, 1 Y.
Rolls
Devali.
right off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yeah. I had to ask you how to pronounce it to begin with, but you chose that name deliberately, right?
Yes. Yeah. So again, like Ally is very heavily used in the accessibility space. A11Y is a numerum. It means accessibility because there's 11 letters between A and Y in accessibility. But yeah, so Dev Ally, we're basically an ally for developers who want to build accessible products.
And I did mention this to you before, but from a Google point of view and
Yes.
from a URL
You did say
point
this,
of view,
yeah.
if I saw that URL, I would wonder, somebody's emailing me from that. Typically, putting ones in a word sometimes denotes that someone's not completely on the level, but I can see the logic for choosing that name. Now, the European Disability Act takes effect next year.
Next June.
And that's going to put an awful lot of obligations on companies, organizations, enterprises to do a lot of the stuff you're talking about. Was this then just smart timing on your part, spotting this as an opportunity that there was a gap here?
It was definitely an accelerator in terms of the businesses wanting to talk to us, but accessibility has been around for a long time, particularly in the US. It has drastically needed improvement for a long period of time. This is just a really good motivating factor for businesses to be compliant, but accessibility as a whole, the industry, it needs to evolve.
Okay, and getting into the nitty-gritty of what you actually want to do in terms of this platform, real-time insights, recommendations, improving accessibility, scanning, identifying non-accessible elements, and then giving feedback on how to take action. What is the difference between that essentially and a consultancy service?
So what we're looking to do in some sense is displace the dependency on consultancies to do this work. So if you can put the onus on a business to actually be responsible for their own accessibility, not too dissimilar to how Vanta does for SOC 2 compliance for these companies, that we can do that from an accessibility perspective, give the people that are building products the responsibility to make accessible products.
Okay. When you're trying to talk to people about this, pitch, maybe raise money, get interest, how much do the people you're trying to pitch, how much do they want you to use the word AI?
All the time. I'm surprised we haven't even used AI on this podcast. It's obviously a big buzzword. It is a big core part of our offering, but in terms of for the customer side, the design partners we're working with, not so much. It's really trying us to solve the need. But for investors and VCs, AI and the legislation has got us into a lot of rooms for sure.
And so talk to me about that in terms of where you see then AI with DevAlly, and is there any meaningful bit of the company that actually uses AI?
Yeah, a lot. And I think that's one of the things that we're very fortunate in a sense, because accessibility has been a very tacit field. So it's required a lot of learned experience, and has a lot of amazing accessibility experts out there, but they're a finite resource. And if you're entirely dependent on the human to actually provide that feedback to you, you're just going to end up with a bottleneck. You're not going to get the work done as quickly. So having come from a development background, what I wanted was, again, the high level stuff to be presented to me in real time. The more detailed stuff from accessibility experts can still be provided, but I wanted to be able to go and actually build that stuff myself. So that's really where AI has come in. It actually now, but before all this, it was incredibly manual, whereas now we can actually start to look at new ways of automating things and start taking context for even images and be able to provide context as to what those images are. So alternative text. So if you're on a news site, if you're a visually impaired user, and I want to actually, see what the context is of that image, often that's not provided. So by using AI, what we can do is we can actually tell you what the contents of that image are and how it pertains to the article.
And that technology, largely, a lot of that's available off the shelf now, isn't it, to you as a developer?
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of the things about how you present that in a meaningful way so that it can be provided back to a developer to add that to a product.
Okay. So where are you at in terms of the development of DevAlly?
So we're basically opening up an early access program in
2 weeks'
in
time.
2 weeks' time. Yeah.
So we've spent the last couple of months just validating, working with the accessibility community to get the product right and build something that matches their needs. And 2 weeks' time, early access program is available to a number of people that we're working with. So that's where we're at.
And what kind of organizations are you hoping will take advantage of that?
We are working right now with some very, very talented folks in large size enterprises to test and prove to test and have a proof of concept. So large enterprises with mainly heads of accessibility.
What's it like trying to get in there with large enterprises, large organizations?
So I'm not going off on a tangent. Being Irish is a massive advantage. Irish people want to help each other. We went over to San Francisco to meet customers and just to knock on doors, and the Irish people gave us an office, got us out of our hostel, so we hadn't had a place to work. But my point is saying that is we have been, obviously we're as mission driven as we can get, but we've relied on it heavily on kind of the luck of the Irish, if you will. People have been very generous, giving it warm introductions, setting us up with the right people in different companies. But again, approaching a large size enterprise is like having 20 different conversations at the same time. So lucky that we have that card there for us.
And so that's one type of card, but there's another type of card in reaching the person you need to reach to, getting in, being persistent, having a good relationship with them to get to, the alpha stage even with them. How has that been?
Again, look, there is the forcing factor of the legislation, but as Cormac was saying, there is a very real pain point for these heads of accessibility and these companies today. If you go with a consultancy, an accessibility consultancy company, you are spending hundreds of thousands on audits. Secondly, those heads of accessibility who we're doing design partnerships with, they are operating in silos. They get sent these audits on spreadsheets which go nowhere. So my point being is that we're like, hey, we can address all of that. We can cut your costs, cut your pain, and we can raise the priority of accessibility up in your company together with you. So the fact we've been very lucky to have champions in companies who have been very quickly able to get us in front of the right people there. So it is challenging. Again, there's been an incredible amount of no's, but we do have some really, really strong design partnerships at the moment.
Okay, so opening in 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks' time.
Okay, and then anything planned after that?
Hiring, so we're bringing on a ton of talented people, but again, like we said, we have our CTO joining very, very shortly, and a few more people on the roadmap as well. So again, if you are looking to join a really cool startup, we'll be opening up roles pretty soon. So yeah.
Okay, well, Cormac Chisholm and Patrick Fox, thank you very much for coming in on the Big Tech Show to explain all of that. JJ Clark produced this episode and Rory Bones was on sound. I'm Adrian Weckler, and you've been listening to or watching the Big Tech Show. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. That was awesome. Wow.
How was that?
Guys,
that was our first podcast.
Very good. Yeah, very good.
Wow. Oh my God.
Um,